Jim. I thought you did good with that.
Okay. All right. I usually like giving it a few minutes for people to start, or a few seconds at least, for people to start coming on, especially we didn't really get a chance to advertise this too much.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for people to start coming on. Scarlett, I might touch upon.
Got one on.
Yeah, got the one person on. And I want to check my Facebook page here real quick.
5 on.
All right, we got people coming on. All right. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us this evening. Wisconsin Right Now Uncensored. We are doing a second podcast of the day. There's just so much to cover that we decided that we would jump on this evening. Scarlett and I kind of briefly this afternoon touched on the Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon departures, and this evening we have Jessica joining us. She's got some really some good take on what happened today.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't join you earlier, but you guys did a great job. In fact, on my way home from UWM, I listened to your podcast in my car instead of turning on talk radio.
Oh,
how cool was that?
I always listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I rarely watch them. I listen to them while I'm doing the laundry, while I'm doing, like, it's all I do now. I don't even watch TV anymore. I'm like listening to podcasts or watching them while I'm cooking, everything. So
I thought you guys were great. I mean, honestly, I was informed and you kept my attention. So good job. But I actually think the podcast point is instructive in terms of like what happens next with Tucker Carlson. Like you guys, I was really shocked by the news. I from all accounts that are emerging now, I think Tucker Carlson himself was shocked and didn't see this coming.
Nope.
However, the media climate is changing radically, and you know we're sort of seeing the waning of television news and traditional television news, especially you know the linear format, Channel 4, 6. I mean, who sits down at 5 p.m. to watch the nightly news anymore? But I think maybe people are getting tired of Fox versus CNN and MSNBC and all these shout shows, and people I think are losing a lot of faith in Fox News already. They already were. And so, you know, I think you're going to be seeing podcasting and alternative media sources getting even more power because of what Fox News did. And I liked your tweet, Scarlett, where you said that this is worse for Fox News than it is for Tucker. And I agree with you. I mean, we've seen Megyn Kelly's podcast take off after, you know, it didn't quite work out for her on network television and on Fox itself. Yeah. And I really like watching her snippets of her podcast. So I think we're actually seeing a shifting of the media landscape and the power in the media. And so Fox News and Rupert Murdoch, they proceed at their own peril here.
Yeah, I think Megyn Kelly is really joyful. Like she talks about a lot. She's so happy with what she's doing. She gets to do it. You know, she's a mom of 3, so it's something she gets to work around her schedule too. And she gets to do this from Connecticut. She doesn't have to be in a certain place. Although I think Tucker Carlson was doing remote. And I don't know if you guys watched Fox Nation, but his 1-hour show is so different from his Tucker Carlson nightly show. And I think he probably enjoys that long form interview a lot more than what he was doing. So I think he's already ready. I think he'll go into kind of long form podcasting. But I guess the question is, will he do like Megyn Kelly and go solo? Will he join up with Daily Wire, The Blaze? You know, what? Or he started Daily Caller and sold that. So he knows how to start an entertainment company. Maybe he does something on his own and thinks, I want to do something completely different from everyone else. Who knows?
He's got a following that is sort of bigger than Fox News. And I think it's loyal. And I'm noticing in the comment thread, people are saying they canceled Fox Nation. Again, I think this may have been, well, someone on Twitter said this is Fox News's Bud Light moment. Maybe it is, where they're just pitting themselves against such a large portion of a loyal audience that this could backfire big time. What do you think, Jim? You agree?
Well,
Are we going to
well,
do sports here?
Jim, someone's talking about
forget-
sports. You'd be the one to know about it. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets. There you go. That's sports.
And I guess everyone's watching the Brewers and the Bucks, but they're telling us that in the comment thread, so they must be sort of watching us with one eye at least.
Oh, the Brewers.
Yeah, I think they're struggling because Mike has asked us to put the scores on the podcast. And if I can actually figure out how to do that, Mike, I will, but I'm still learning. And yeah, sorry about the inconvenience. Remember, we're recording. We have podcasts. You can watch us later too if you want to go watch the game instead. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's recorded. It'll be on our Facebook pages, our Twitter pages. You can go back and watch. You can watch both, really.
And
that's the beauty of podcasting.
I want to mention we're going to be talking about the Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon, but also we did get a recording. Jessica was able to record the Sun Priaire School Board meeting that happened tonight, 6:00. And apparently, I haven't seen it yet, but according to Jessica, the first 11 minutes or so are very, what should we say, fireworks? Crazy? How would you describe it?
The first person was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then the other people were just feisty and took it to the school board, the Sun Priaire School Board. And by the way, I want to give myself a little credit here because Jim didn't think I could figure out how to screen record live video. He wrote me off. He's like,
I did. My son had a baseball game this evening, and I was like freaking out how I'm going to record this thing. And Jessica said, "Well, I can give it a try."
You have to share with me how you did that because I can't figure it out. I was using my phone to record it while my daughter was in her tutoring lesson at Mathnasium. So I had my iPad up and I was trying to record it with my phone. So
you guys are multitaskers. Yeah, that doesn't work. And I kind of screwed it up because I should have expanded the screen, I think, but whatever. We got enough of it, right, Jim?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
So maybe let's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Well, I was going to say maybe we should set up really quickly what this is about for anybody living in a cave who doesn't know what's going on in Sun Priaire. And then maybe we should just play one person at a time and then stop after each speaker for the first maybe 11 minutes of it. And we can comment on after, because they only get 3 minutes to speak each. And then we can comment on their comments.
My husband said, I've never heard you say the word penis as much as I have over the last 72 hours.
Okay, Scarlett, that'll increase our audience, I'm sure. So
he's like, oh my God.
Every time either of you say it, it's going to increase our audience probably by 100.
You know,
I know, 500 more people come on.
My daughter's like, I don't want to hear that anymore. I don't want to hear about someone exposing their penis. So
all right.
So we did it again, another 100 people.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
Jim, please don't say it. We really don't need to hear that.
No, I'm not going to be saying it. I don't enjoy saying that. No. Okay, so I think I've got it set up here on the screen. A second here all right, Jessica.
Rocket said, "Good job, Jessica." Yeah, I'm kind of proud of this stream, even though it's kind of weirdly small, but.
Yeah, it's a little odd. Sorry about that.
You get the idea. Just think, haughty, arrogant school board.
All right.
Well, wait till you hear this first guy. This first guy is quite a piece of work. I believe he's a student representative on the board, I think. And I'm going to tell you guys right out of the gate that this guy here, he's out of step with everyone else. But listen to this guy.
He's wearing
a mask. My name is Eli Gillitzer. I live at 1536 Sapphire Way, Sun Priaire.
The giveaway right there, Scarlett, right?
The case recently brought against the board by WILL is at once embarrassingly ill-conceived and also violently bigoted, a borderline call for legal persecution of all trans people across Wisconsin. The actual situation in particular presented by WILL is ridiculous given a moment of scrutiny. What is the actual problem in this situation other than a trans student existing? That a student of the school undressed in a public locker room? If undressing there constitutes harassment, then clearly the issue isn't biological sex differences, as I have to deal with uncomfortably undressed guys every swimming unit, and all of them have the exact same genitalia as I do. If you are worried about privacy in a locker room,
but that's the point, dude.
Go into one of the stalls. My personal solution is not to look at other students' genitals. If we instead force trans students in the locker room of their biological sex, what is the response when they begin to undergo hormones and surgery? When WILL attorney Dan Lennington says, "We're upset because someone exposed their penis to 4 teenage girls," what does a trans boy born female change if they get surgery for a penis? If the women's locker room is policy and WILL enforce, then he'd be exposing his penis to teen girls. If a trans girl starts estrogen but doesn't get surgery, she will grow breasts but still have a penis. By Dan's standards, she can't change in the boys' locker room. She'd be exposing her breasts to teen boys.
Oh my God.
Women's locker room either, because she'd be exposing her penis to teen girls. Where does she change? WILL doesn't want her changing anywhere. They don't want her being anywhere. Dan's standards sure as hell aren't based on biological
This is
sex.
gold.
So when he says that this isn't a transgender issue, he must be
He only
either
goes 3
stupid
minutes,
or
so.
lying and hoping everyone else is stupid enough to believe him.
Right.
He, WILL, and many more are coming to the board to call for the systematic, targeted exclusion and ostracization of trans kids. The assertion that trans inclusion in single-sex spaces creates danger for anybody is to allege not only that people of the same sex are incapable of harassing, assaulting, or otherwise harming each other, but also to assert that trans people are themselves dangerous predators. A belief that's nothing but a reissue of the homophobic rhetoric that promoted policies and violence against homosexuality across the country for so long. It is darkly comic that the same people pretending to be so concerned about the safety of our students are some of the same ones who have actively called for violence in public and on social media against trans students and children.
No one ever
done that.
No one.
Frankly, current district policy is
I would say
laughable.
give us
The
one
separation
example of
locker rooms by
that.
sex, no matter the circumstances, is just a terrible policy the moment you give it any thought. Thank you.
He got buzzed.
Let's
Yeah,
pause
maybe
there for a
stop
second.
it. Yeah,
All
pause it.
Oh my
So this
God.
guy, the mask was the giveaway, right?
Yep.
That was the big giveaway of where this was going. This guy, I don't even know where to begin with this guy, except he's a walking caricature, right? He's a walking symbol of the weakness of the left's argument. They just go for emotion. You want to kill all trans people. You want to incite violence. You hate all trans. No. I don't think anybody reasonable, like 99.999% of the people that have an issue with what allegedly happened in that locker room don't hate transgender people.
Not at all.
Don't hate gay people. I, for one, I don't care what if gay people want to get married.
Gay. This
who they
isn't
want to love,
lesbian.
right?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's about the rights of the 14-year-old girls, who are freshman girls, to not see male genitalia in adult males' genitalia in a school locker room. Like it's really very case specific.
Yes, and it kind of showed the confusion that he's like, well, what if there's breasts? And, I mean, they're 14 to 17 years old. I think the solution is to have some separate spaces. That's just the best solution. And further along, there was a mom who spoke, who said she has a gay child. So she's like, this isn't at all about gay lesbian students. And then she also says that she has a daughter who plays boys football, and her daughter has to change in janitor closets and all these different places for her protection and to not make the boys uncomfortable. And that's just the way it is. Like, she's the only female on this all male team. So when she has to change, they find somewhere, they try to accommodate her. But they don't make all the boys leave the locker room so she can go in and shower. They
don't let her change in the locker room.
No, they don't.
In front of the boys.
For her. They find a space.
Yeah. Right. So I agree. When he says, and this is a typical left-wing argument, well, where are they supposed to change? You don't want them to change anywhere. No. You know how you go to Target as well, or Walmart, and there's sort of family bathrooms and just sort of anyone can go in, like single-use bathrooms? That would be one possibility when it comes to bathrooms, or you could have a shower in there. Like, there's different accommodations a school district could make. or just have a separate space for people transitioning.
Yeah.
Because there are competing rights here. And I feel like people like that speaker and on the left, they completely disregard the fact that the 14-year-old girls have rights here.
Well, and that's what seems to always be ignored here. That is the last consideration, is these 14-year-old girls that had to sit there in the shower and look at this. Like, no one seems to care about those girls. It's everything about this 18-year-old male who was showering. You know, my other point is, what is wrong? It seems to me a good compromise here would it be to have a third locker room, third bathroom for transgender people. Why is that not being considered? Why aren't we doing that?
We could
And
call
that's not
it
that hard.
gender neutral. We call it a gender neutral space because maybe there are girls or boys that are also very shy. Maybe they're fresh. Maybe they don't want to change. Like, just have a gender neutral area that provides privacy for anyone who desires privacy. And then it doesn't have to be specific. It's gender neutral. As a matter of fact, my own 16-year-old daughter just told me that she often gets embarrassed just changing in front of all the girls. So she always finds a corner, and she would love if there was some more privacy, even in same-sex areas. So maybe a very shy child can use that space because that also exists. Maybe there's a girl struggling with an eating disorder or something else, and she doesn't want her body to be seen. So let's figure out something, and it could be multi-purpose, used for different reasons. And I just think that that's just the obvious solution. And I think most trans actual people that are going through this want that. I think they don't want to sort of be on display. They don't want this kind of attention. And which makes me think, in this particular case, as we know, I don't know the name for it, but there is a sexual fetish where men like to dress as women or be in a women's space. There's something that's for them exciting about doing this. This just sounds like somebody who he disrobed in front of them. He showered next to them. He didn't go to a far corner. He didn't wait till they left. They were in their swimsuits. They were showering quickly. And as you know, Jessica, like, you both have teenage kids, you know how short a time span they have before they have to get to their next class. They're moving fast. He wasn't a part of that swim unit. Dan said that today. I listened to him in an interview. So he was just there. Like, it seems like he just walked in and decided, I can use this space. There's a lot of questions I have about the details surrounding this, but I think it's very obvious that these girls were violated. This is a Title IX case, and it should have been handled differently.
Well, there's nothing that the school district has said that has negated the argument that the girls were violated by being forced to see something that they shouldn't have to see, against their wishes at a very, very tender age. I've been rather appalled by the school district's lack of transparency over this. And so the school district put out, a press release in which they basically said this violated district practices, which, Jim, you had flagged for me. You said that's a really odd semantical choice of language. But then they went on to say this, shouldn't have happened. We took steps to make sure it didn't reoccur. It won't reoccur. So that's sort of acknowledging it happened and that it wasn't right, and that they're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But then they threw in this line saying, but there were all these inaccuracies and people, all these uninformed news articles, blah, 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 but failed to say a single specific thing that was actually inaccurate. So what I watched happen with great interest, because I'm obviously very interested in media bias issues, is the liberal media, like the Wisconsin State Journal, grabbed that single line on inaccuracies. They threw it into their headlines. And then they buried everything else. They buried the fact the school district was basically admitting it happened. And then all the liberal comment writers went on their social pages of like the State Journal and said, aha, see, it's Fox News. Fox News is being inaccurate, blah, blah, blah. It's inaccurate. So we can't trust a word Fox News says. And they made it all about like Fox News and honestly, diverted the outrage and the attention off of the real issues. I thought it was a classic example of media bias. But Jim, I thought you were right to flag that clever use of semantics. What does that mean? It ran against or didn't conform with, or however they said it, district practices.
I mean, the way I read it is there's always a difference between policy and practice, right? An institution can have a policy in place, but that doesn't mean that policy is necessarily being followed. It's what's the institution's practice. And so it is interesting as to when they use the variation, and they never explained it. And that's part of the problem here. You know, they talked about various news organizations with all their articles, they got it wrong. I'm sorry. We wrote on it. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel wrote on it the next day, and I think was it the Masson.com, I think, did a story. But all of those stories were based on Will's press release. And so all the facts remained the same through all the stories. And it was just very interesting that the school board, why can't the school come out and say what about the story was wrong? You don't have to identify anything, any of the students or anything. Tell us what was incorrect, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, you're right. So how is it a privacy issue for them to come out and say something didn't happen or this fact is untrue specifically? If it's untrue, say it, because there's nobody's privacy violated because you're saying it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's a complete dishonest dodge. They're just using this privacy argument to not have to admit the facts, or to, actually to throw a bunch of dust in the air, to divert attention from the controversy. I thought it was really a disgracefully non-transparent press release.
Well, let's watch another clip.
Yeah, let's hear another clip. So here's what's interesting. I watched this whole school board meeting.
I just want to give
live.
a shout out first on to Sarah Ann. She's finally joining us. She's blown us off the last few, and she had a hysterical comment.
Oh gosh, that was the best comment of the week. Can we give out best comment, best podcast comment, blue ribbons?
So far, Sarah Ann has the best comment. Yeah. All right. So yeah.
I'm going to use the word hot dog. I'm not using the P word. I'm going to call it a hot dog.
Ed is
like
on.
She did.
Ed, if you want to come on for a little bit, give us your input here. I can send you a link. Let me know. Okay. Yeah. So let's play it up. Jessica, do you know what?
So let me set up the rest. So we had this crazy guy that came on the front end with the mask, but then everyone else came on and they were extraordinary. I mean, and especially in the first 11 minutes. So let's keep listening. You're going to get a better taste of the room, because this first guy was the outlier. There weren't many there. He was by himself with that stance. The vast majority of people who were there, and apparently it was overflowing. They had so many people who showed up.
You can see them standing up all along the walls.
Yeah.
That's a full board. Look at that. You can see full board meeting.
Yeah, they had an overflow room and stuff, apparently. So yeah, let's listen to the next person. It'll give you a better flavor of the majority.
Andy Johnson. Just name and address.
Andy Johnson, 1175 Crossing Ridge Trail. I've worked in government and policy and industry standards for 20 years as an off-site Washington, D.C. Department of Defense government contractor. I'm also a Sun Priaire resident and have 2 kids at West and 1 that graduated from East. I deal with technology and acquisition compliance, so I'm used to dealing with rigid terms and topics, and this is similar to law. I'm not a lawyer, but as a Department of Defense contractor, I'm well aware of chain of command.
Uh-oh, what happened to it?
Sorry about that.
And policy ownership and control. The Sun Priaire School District, when making allowances and setting up transgender students for failure, because those students could be intersecting, as we are seeing today, with sexual harassment and sexual violence policies, not only in the school district policy itself, but in civil and criminal matters. The district policy is more of guidance than actual policy. The accommodations are not well defined. Both need to be specific and have conditions, expectations, and penalties. It needs to align its policy with law and with all possibilities within that law. Exposure of genitalia, intentional or not, causes biological and emotional reactions in others: fear, arousal, shame, disgust. This works both ways, from one to many and many to one. Both the exposer and the persons they are exposing to have rights.
This guy's a little dry. You
Avoid
can tell
policy
he's
conflict
been,
and intersection with
Yeah.
civil and criminal matters. The best thing for all involvement of exposure, being unable to find privacy of their own, whether in a stall, curtain, etc.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to text Ed, and also I got to switch over my internet.
Is to restrict access by biology. Emails have used the term sex, but that seems to carry different meaning with different people, so I'll stick to biology. The first consideration would be to consider biology rather than gender for all places of potential exposure. While this might not feel right, inclusive, or equitable for the extra restrictions, it is the way for everyone involved to be the most protected. If an all biological solution will not be considered, then consider scaling down based on the potentiality for exposure. Bathroom for stalls would have less potential than a wide open set of showers, for example. If not corrected, ill-defined policy is going to get the Sun Priaire School District pulled into civil and criminal litigation for acting as authoritative guidance that could not only interfere with the law, but the widest interpretation of that law, resulting in lawsuits. As a Sun Priaire taxpayer and public school parent, I don't want my school district paying out settlements and pulled into this. To respond to the emails put out by the Sun Priaire School District leadership, the email says that the district does not condone a student of one sex showering in the presence of a student of another sex, but do they actually prohibit it? Or is it just blank on the topic? The emails say that steps have been taken and that it was addressed, but however, the supposed resolution was not accepted by all parties. The district solution is told the assaulted girls to put in a request to use a private bathroom to shower. A clear case of blaming the victim cannot be made. The message for young women is, if you are afraid, just go hide. I'm ashamed of our Sun Priaire school leadership. The emails are bagged and you've lost our benefit of the doubt. So please show me a new policy, show me the changes, show me the steps that you have taken in writing with dated policy. Thank you.
So, pause it. Yeah, so the next person's more fiery. So you're right. I mean, I agree. Like someone said, delivery doesn't matter. All who spoke were heartfelt. Dina Ferguson said that in a comment thread. I agree with her. I mean, this guy was very logical. You know, you can tell he's a defense contractor or whatever. But, you know, he really did lay it out pretty well. And when you boil it down, what he's saying is they're opening themselves up, and they're opening the transgender students up to potential criminal liability. They're opening a school district up to potential civil liability. He's saying your policies are vague, they're ill-defined, they're not recognizing obvious questions like the rights of the 14-year-old girls. And he's saying, as a taxpayer, I don't want to have to pay for that when the inevitable lawsuits come your way. Clean it up.
Yes, good points.
Okay.
And then Robert Kolb said they don't care. It's not their money in the comment thread. Good point, Robert. You know, good point. But this stuff is going to have legal cost if they keep this up.
Yes, I know some people have said that, well, there'll be an expense for, you know, kind of updating a bathroom or something, or a locker room, but there'll be a lot more heartache and expense with legal fees. And the truth of the matter is, we've got the 7th district decision regarding what happened in, was it Racine? And that is on the books. And we know that the new proposed Title IX changes are going to come down from the Biden administration. They are not in place yet. That does not mean that every bathroom needs to be open to every gender. It does mean that there'll need to be some accommodations as these cases work their way through this and ultimately end up in the lap of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court makes a final decision, whether they hear the case and rule on it, or a case comes before them and they reject it. I mean, and leave a patchwork of different policies across the states. We'll know, or we get a new president, which is my sincere hope. And then with a new president, we have a new directive.
And, I'm going to offer a stance, and hear a lot of my wall, but I mean, in my opinion on this might change depending on the facts, but it's very possible that the school district here put the transgender student in a terrible position as well. Like, we don't really know
That's
the
true.
guidance that the adults, and I know the transgender student's an adult, but 18 years old and a senior in high school, right? So I expect the adults, I expect the administrators, the principals, teachers, et cetera, to give proper guidance. What did they tell this transgender student was okay? How did the transgender student end up in the locker room? And some of the parents made a really good point. Like, why did it take so long to come out, and for the parents of the 14-year-old girls to find out? In other words, I have empathy actually for the transgender student. I mean, it seems inappropriate what happened in the locker room. Of course, I'm not saying it wasn't, but who told this transgender student that that was okay to do, or that, oh, all you have to do is say you're trans and now you can go in the girls' locker room and do this? Like, I'm wondering if it's more a failure of the district than that youth.
Well, and I wonder if that's the difference between policy and practice. Scarlett, is it your understanding that the policy did that this 18-year-old did follow policy?
Yes, the 18-year-old followed the policy because the policy was completely vague. The policy stated that a student can go into the locker room, the bathroom, the shower room of the gender that they identify with, and it does not require a gender support plan. It doesn't require, in the 7th district decision, what was made clear is that it was a girl using a boy's space, but she had already been undergoing hormone treatment. She had a diagnosis. She had sought therapy. She had a medical diagnosis signed by doctors. She, had gone through this whole process. What we don't know in this situation is, did this boy do something similarly? From what I read from Will, that did not appear to be the case, or at least that's what they're requesting. They're requesting documentation. They're requesting to know, what did the district know? But as far as the way the policy is laid out, there is no requirement for a student to meet with a counselor, set up a gender support plan, have parents sign off on a plan. That's another thing. Did the parents sign off? And then to work together to find a solution that would accommodate everyone involved. And that doesn't seem to be something that the district did. And the tone of what the parents, if you watch more, I think we'll watch some more clips, we're going to hear that more. I think I want everyone to listen to the parents describe this situation, that this is a district that has not been communicating well and has a lot of confusing policies.
So Jessica,
I just want people...
Jessica, just to your point then, that is where I think the difference is between policy and practice. I think the policy technically allowed this male or trans woman or whatever to use that bathroom. And that's why the press release said it didn't follow district practice, meaning policy allowed it, but it's not the practice of the district to do it.
Well, that's why when, there were people on my walls saying this transgender student should be criminally charged, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, we're flying blind. There's so many details we don't know, and those details could change my opinion about this. But as it stands right now, I want people to put the microscope on the district, on the administrators, the officials who create the policies, who somehow gave a signal to this 18-year-old that this was an appropriate thing to do. That's, I guess, where I come down. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Ed. Or should we say Facebook user? Why is
Our
it
Facebook user? Hi, Facebook user.
Always come on as it's always Facebook user.
I've been wondering that myself, and it just gotten to the point where I just accept things. But we have another Facebook user in there, so that's cool too. So I'm not alone.
We do? Oh yeah. Who said sue the school and sue the governor?
Yeah.
That's not you?
That one's not me. No.
Yeah.
Not right now anyway.
Right.
That might be later.
Ed, you got anything you want to, before we play the next video, anything you want to throw in?
What fascinates me about this is that there's no rules when it comes to dealing with transgender individuals. I mean, just look at the one term, gender fluid. If I wanted to be a woman, I could just tell you, I identify as a woman. I can now start doing woman things. I can be involved in woman activities.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it gets really weird and wonky, because this is where you have conservatives and there are conservative people that are transgender, but because they're not following the rule, the dogma, the woke, social justice folks out there, they're not considered to be real. And like that first guy that was speaking here, he did all the talking points. That's what he did, but he put a little bit of passion into it. That was a smooth mask, by the way. And I'm just, it blows me away, because I have to make sure that I'm not thinking in my frame, because in my frame, this is where my own bias comes in. I think other people should understand these issues like you, anyone else should. The problem is most people don't. And that's why we have, this type of problem going on. Now you got a young man over here, or a young wannabe woman, whatever you want to call it, who's confused because the policies were not clear, but the practice that was on point.
And
He did exactly what he was doing.
I would like to point out that I'm reading from the Sun Priaire policy. This I've read through, especially recently, a lot of gender policies that they'll call their restroom and locker accessibility guideline. This is the most expansive that I've read. It says a student who is transgender, non-binary, or gender expansive. They have opened this up to anybody. So non-binary, it's whatever, as far as identity, you can use whatever locker space, shower space, or bathroom space. You do not have to say, I am transgender. You can simply say, I'm non-binary. And when you've listened to as much of the talking points given by the woke or read the books that I have, in their opinion, every day that could change. So one day a child could feel one way and tomorrow they could feel another. And so what restroom they're going to use, that could be a mystery to the staff day by day. This is policy that's just unworkable, and you are asking for litigation. Wisconsin is going to see more stories like this. This is the first, it won't be the last, if we don't come together and realize things have gone off the rails.
All right.
So maybe let's play the next person. Yeah.
Eric Parkey, 505 Normandy Court, Sun Priaire. So the incident that happened was something that could have been totally avoided. And moreover, not letting the parents know that an incident happened back, I think it was March 3rd that this took place. I remember being on vacation and getting an email stating that a kindergartner made a Lego gun and was going bang bang at 5th grade students at the time. This is well before school shootings kind of a thing. And that got blown out into a big proportion, but none of the parents were involved in anything with this. There was an incident that happened that involved children with an adult male, biological male. Now this person identifies as a female. I get that. I understand that. I don't know where they're supposed to change, but changing in front of 14-year-old girls, 15-year-old girls is not the place that they should be doing it. They should probably have their own bathrooms, their own place to go. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. They can participate in the sports. They can do what they want. I'm not saying that they can't, but they need to have their own space as well as everybody else. We cannot trample on the feelings of 14-year-old girls, boys, transgender people constantly and saying, it's the equitable thing to do is to screw over the group of girls because they get to look at a penis in the locker room. This isn't the place that we should be doing this, is in public schools. You built the high school when transgender bathrooms were going out and being put into schools. Why the hell there's not a shower stall area for transgender people to go in and use is beyond me.
It's a great point.
Who the hell decided to spend this money to design a school that doesn't have a space for all people? It is absolutely ridiculous and absurd to me how this district is failing the children at damn near every turn, whether it's academically or just changing your freaking clothes. You guys can't seem to figure out what the hell you need to do to make everybody happy. But we yell and we scream, equitable, equitable, equitable. And it means crap. You're not doing jack shit about any of it within this district. It's all talk, it's all rhetoric. It means nothing.
Good.
Okay, well done, man. That was good.
That was very good.
He made me happy. Not gonna lie.
I think most people who spoke were of that vein. They all had their different style and their slightly different angles and way of saying it. But really, if I'm remembering correctly, there was only one other person who was sort of on the left. And he wasn't like the first guy. He just basically brought up, and this is a fair point, that transgender youth have high suicide rates and everything, and that people need to have empathy for the youth involved, which I agree with. And that was it. Like, he didn't try to defend it. He also went down the path of, oh, we don't really know what's true here because the school district has so muddied that in some people's minds. But everybody else was more like this guy.
Very good. I'll play the next one.
I just want to bring something up real quick here. I'm taking a few notes as I'm watching this, and one of the biggest issues I think that is not being discussed with the transgender issue and just young people as a whole is the role that social media plays in this. I oftentimes will preach about, be aware of the bubble that you're in. And I've seen it happen way too many times. People have this little bubble that they're involved in, whether it's a county party, this group, that group, whatever. You think you're doing all kinds of things, but really all you're doing is getting attaboys because you're preaching to the choir. Social media, based on the algorithms, they feed you the things that you're looking for. And when all of a sudden you say, man, that's how I feel. I have gender dysmorphia. Maybe I'm trans. Maybe I'm this or that or whatever. And then you go out into the real world and then you wonder why they're not accepting you like the people on social media are accepting you. Well, that's a bigger problem. Another note I took here is that this idea, and I do think this is a great idea if we were talking in terms of practicality, yes, a separate bathroom for trans individuals. The problem there is that they're going to claim that's discriminatory. You're not accepting them, i.e., trans women are real women. It's a talking point. It's a hashtag. And unfortunately, we're not fighting it to the point where we can combat it enough because they're still making their inroads.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but either way, we're sort of at this point where we will discriminate against the biological girls, or it could be a group of boys. I mean, there's a case in Florida. When I was in Florida last year, I listened to Matt Woodside deliver a speech where he was a athletic coach, and there was a biological girl that undressed completely naked and was showering with the biological boys, and they were extreme. They didn't know what to do. They were very uncomfortable. It was, and he, as an adult male, had to be in there, and he was just, what am I doing here? Like, this is a teenage girl. I can't look. They were all like, just, it was a big story just last year. And then Florida proceeded to prohibit. That was one of the first things that Ron DeSantis did in these culture wars, prohibit that, private spaces for girls, private spaces for boys. So this can go either way, though typically it seems that this is affecting girls more. There was just a case with a sorority group where the girls in a sorority felt violated, that there were four men who identified as trans in their sorority who were basically making them uncomfortable, watching them undress. A lot of bad things happened. Megyn Kelly just did a very viral clip on this, that as women, we do have to say, protect our girls. We want to protect our spaces. This isn't that we are against transgender adults. It's that we deserve our privacy. We deserve our private spaces. So do our daughters. And you cannot discriminate against us in order to not hurt the feelings of a much smaller group of people. Like, we've got to work out something else and not sacrifice our dignity, sacrifice all that we've worked for, and basically equal opportunity. We can't sacrifice those things. We do as women. I think we're very compassionate. We're very empathetic. But in this case, I need to hold the line and protect my space and protect the space of my daughters.
Well, there are competing rights that people like the first guy with the mask just refuse to acknowledge, that there are the rights of the 14-year-old girls as well, and their parents, honestly, to be informed about what had occurred, and an obligation of the school district to protect those girls, you know, from seeing something they don't want to see and shouldn't have to see at age 14. Jim, should we play one more person maybe, and
Yeah.
then
Let's play another
cut
one.
it after that? I think this is a elderly woman that comes up. Let me see if I remember right. Yeah, she's pretty good. Maybe we can take her last, and then
Okay.
the rest kind of repeat each other.
I live at
You gotta turn it on.
My name is Jackie Rindle. I live at 910 Betty Lee Court in Sun Priaire. I'm a concerned grandparent with grandchildren in this school district. We raise 4 of our own kids here. I usually don't get involved like this, but I can't sit back and I'm mad. I'm here because I could not believe what I was hearing and seeing on our national news and in our
Uh-oh.
It's raining here. It might take a second.
everywhere about this shower incident in the girls' locker room. It's all over the news, and this happened way back in March and was kept secret until now, in my opinion. I don't know if that's true. First, you tried to spin it by saying that what was reported was false. Now you're admitting that this 18-year-old transgender person did go into this girl's shower with girls in there. That person is an adult, in my opinion. This should be a criminal matter, not a let's just brush it under the carpet matter. These girls were violated, and this should, and I have 4 girls, so I understand that if this was my kid, girls, this would be a whole different talk. These girls were violated, and this should be considered sexual harassment, no matter who were violated and how you can spin it. I ask you, all you sitting up there, they're supposed to be protecting our kids, keeping our kids safe. When in the world would it ever be permissible for someone with male body parts to shower, go into a locker room, strip naked, and walk into a shower with 14-year-old girls? When? Well, I guess they're allowed to be doing it now in Sun Priaire, and that's sick. My question now is, how are you planning to keep anyone with male body parts out of a place where girls should have felt safe, but can no longer be safe? You have to have anticipated this back when you felt it in your control to be teaching our 5-year-olds about gender identity without parents' permission. Why wasn't there a policy in place? Now you are saying there is a policy in place. Well, what the hell is it?
She's right.
Yeah, good ending there.
Yeah.
I liked her. I liked her because she's not slick. You can tell she doesn't maybe public speak all the time, not in her comfort zone, doesn't show up to every school board meeting, but just cares deeply about this, just finds this to be really wrong enough to come out to the school board, meeting on a kind of chilly night. Good for her. I think she kind of spoke to the, probably the general sentiment in the community. Someone described to me that Sun Prairie, though, it's like 30% conservative and 70% liberal or something.
Yeah, it is.
So it's got a lot of tensions because there's just enough conservatives, right, to like organize and speak out and get upset about things like this. But you've got this, big chunk of the populace certainly running the school system where they're more far left. So you're getting this clash.
Well,
Um,
there's a recent poll that something I just read that said about 70% of adults agree that their spaces should be protected. Girls and women's space should be protected, and that there should be something done to make sure that girls' sports remain all biological girls. So that is across the board. I've read a bunch of different polling, and I know polling isn't always 100%, but I think that lines up pretty well. This is a 70-30 issue where I think 70% of Americans agree. So this is something that, with that in mind, this is something that I would expect to see. I would like to see a bill. And I know Tony Evers probably won't sign it, but that shouldn't stop us from bringing forth a bill that protects women's sports, that protects women's private spaces. And I think it would be a good way to hold some committee hearings, ask some questions, try to clarify some policy. Let's have Riley Gaines come into Madison and testify. Let's get a bunch of female athletes to come in and testify and talk about how they feel. Let's really kind of explore this issue in Wisconsin. And frankly, if Evers wants to be the guy that's pro having girls shower with grown men as they expose their penis, yes, I said it again, then let him be that guy. Let the Democrats in Wisconsin be the party that's supportive of putting grown men into girls' showers. Let Evers and let the Democrats be the party that will undermine female sports, take away our daughters' opportunities for scholarships. Let them wear that proudly, and let us stand for sanity.
Well, where are the feminists in all of this debate? They've vanished. Literally, where are the feminists? If you eradicate gender from society, how do you have women's rights?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have women, or anyone can be a woman, you don't have women's rights. Where are the feminists on that?
Yeah, I agree.
It is shocking to me that Democrats historically have always been pro-women, women's rights, and this transgender issue came along and they just completely threw the women's movement off the bus. And it's shocking to me. And you're right. I mean, we've done a complete 180 when it comes to women's rights. I want to address Denise here. Correct, Denise. Now, the school hasn't really addressed why he was in that shower, but we do know that he wasn't in that physical ed swim class, but it is unclear why he found it necessary to be in the shower at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been incredibly non-transparent, right? Their press release said almost nothing, but they did admit that this was something that shouldn't have happened and should not reoccur. And that's a pretty big admission, but it didn't drive the liberal media headlines at all. They kind of buried that point. I thought that was a really big admission by the school district. They're basically saying it happened. It seemed to me. Maybe we should, I mean, go around and give our final take on this and then move on to Tucker. I want to talk about Tucker.
Yeah, let's do that. Go ahead, Scarlett.
My final take, I will quote Riley Gaines, and I will say, forcing girls to undress in front of an intact and exposed male is an egregious violation of our personal dignity, and it is not kind and inclusive to expose women and girls to this. So I agree with her.
Jessica?
I guess I just wanted to say that Riley Gaines is really shaping up to be quite a heroine, very courageous, standing up for women's rights. Again, that doesn't mean people are against transgender people or against, people being gay or marrying the people they love or whatever. She's standing up for the rights of women to have fair competitions. And I've watched with interest just the absolute appalling behavior that's been directed at her at college campuses all over the country.
Awful. It's awful.
It's despicable, but good for her. We'll see if she wins the Woman of the Year, whatever. What is that award that Caitlyn Jenner won? Women of the Year, ESPN something. It was ESPN something or other award. Will they give it to her? Will she be the Time Magazine Person of the Year? I mean, I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see that with this current woke culture that the best woman is actually a biological man. I mean, again, where's feminism?
So they're AWOL because modern feminism is a political question, right? You see this breakdown on abortion as well. You see a breakdown when the feminists didn't defend, people that were treated poorly by Bill Clinton through abusive power situations. And, instead they went and trashed the women and that's the intern or whatever.
That's a really good point. That's a
modern feminists will defend the Democrat or the liberal ideology over the woman. And that's literally the bottom line. And I think this issue has exposed that once again. They don't speak for me, modern liberal feminists. Liberal women don't get to control the debate anymore. They don't speak for me.
Mm-hmm.
Ed?
One of the things watching the lady that was just speaking that really hit me. Now, to Jessica's point, is she necessarily the best speaker in the world? Probably not used to that. Absolutely. That's what I picked up too. But the emotion that I picked up, the tone, the inflection that I picked up, I thought was actually really big because when she said, I usually don't get involved, how huge is that? Yeah. And we've seen that over the last few years. And it's interesting as we watch this, it's drawing more and more people out. And not as fast as we wanted to, but it is drawing people out. And that's a big deal. The other thing, and a great question, where are all the feminists? It is wildly entertaining to a degree when you start watching competing interests on the left. Because when you think about feminism, yeah, you got a man, you got a woman, and you both are equally good at this particular job. Yes, pay them the same. Makes all the sense in the world, right? What we're dealing with is fourth wave feminism. I don't need a man, and we can just do fine on our own. Yeah, some women can do fine on their own. But when you're denigrating an entire other gender, well, then you start competing with the transgender other thing. It's intersectionality on steroids. And this is the type of thing that, like I said, is entertaining to a certain degree until you realize that it's affecting everybody. And then you have issues like this in Sun Priaire. We even see it in areas where I'm at in Washera County. It's not as pronounced, but it's coming. And anybody who thinks they're safe in supposed red counties, yeah, you got another thing coming.
Jim, you get the final word on the topic.
Boy, there's so much to say. Again, the feminist point is huge. On how girls and women have just been tossed aside in this debate. I think this is a PR disaster for the Sun Priaire School District. They could have handled this so much better if they would have just come out, been forthright, admitted the mistake, admitted what happened, and just vowed to move on and be better about it. And they're not. They're trying to cover up for it. They're accusing media and us and Will of lying. And I just think it's going to become worse and worse and worse as these parents, as you mentioned, Ed, are now engaging. And, I surmised when this story broke, I think privately, Jessica and Scarlett, we were talking, I questioned if this is going to be the case that the straw that breaks the camel's back and that finally ignites people to say, whoa, enough. What are we doing? This cannot happen in our society. And I'm wondering if that's not what we're seeing right now.
Well, here's what they're going to do about that, Jim, because it is. You see this, and we saw this happen with some of our coverage of like parole and things like that, or janitor. They just injected that one line. Oh, it's inaccurate. There were inaccuracies. They didn't say what was inaccurate. And then all the media trumpeted in their headlines, oh, there's inaccuracies. And then all the liberal commentators go, well, there's inaccuracies. You can't trust Fox News. And so because they know it's so bad, that's the dodge. Like, they can't argue the merits of this one.
And we should make it clear that that's the intent of the school board and the left media, is to say, well, there's these inaccuracies. We don't really know what the truth is. And what that does, that scares away all of other media from reporting on it. Now the media can say, well, listen, there's a lot of different sides of the story. We're not really sure what the truth is. So we're just not going to report on it, period.
Well, and it's a bit more insidious, in my opinion, because when you do that, like you both said, it kicks the can down the road. Because by the time that they actually report on the accuracies or talk about the unnamed sources, this is the game they play. Because at that point, now there's another dumpster fire over here. People are paying attention to that.
Right.
They're not paying attention to the issue that happened that you reported on. Oh, it's inaccuracies. Well, okay, fake news.
That's the
It's
dodge.
ridiculous.
That's the game. They did
Mhm.
this on Parole with Jim and I. They tried, the numbers are inaccurate, blah, blah, blah. They weren't. And then they twisted the numbers themselves to try to claim somehow the numbers were inaccurate to avoid talking about the fact Tony Evers was paroling, or his appointee was paroling some of the most brutal killers in state history. Like, they didn't want to talk about
Mhm.
that. They didn't want to interview the victims' families who weren't being notified contrary to state law. But, the numbers weren't right, even though they were. This is sort of the game they play. They can't argue this one on the facts.
Well, the Janet stories too, Jessica. They did the same thing to us when it came to the stories
Yeah,
that we wrote on
same
Janet.
thing.
Yeah.
Janet said, I might think about suing them. And then the headline isn't that she's accused of using a racial slur by two people. The headline is Janet's thinking of suing people, which was, I thought, a tactic to scare the rest of the media off from covering it, which worked. And then, like 3 hours later, Janet Prosewicz walked back the lawsuit threat to another publication, and the Journal Sentinel refused to correct the record and tell the readers that it is actually the same tactic. Just throw out there that something's inaccurate or someone might sue or whatever, to just shut it down.
Kick the
To
can
just
down the
shut it
road.
down, because you cannot win if enough people find out about it, right? They lose if enough people in the Wisconsin populace find out what happened in that locker room. Like, the Sun Prairie School District will lose the narrative. They will lose the PR battle. 99% of people won't think it's okay. They know this. So.
All right. Very good. Do you guys want to pivot to the Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon story? Ed, you want to talk about that, or what would you like to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about Tucker. Oh
story,
my goodness.
Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon, that story is lit. I'm not going to lie. I'm like McDonald's over here. I'm like, da, 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 da. I'm loving it, especially the Don Lemon part. Because, I mean, what do they do with Don Lemon over the last several months? They've like shifted him around. They've had him go to, from the morning to the evening to late night and everything else like that. And then what was it he was saying about Tulsi Gabbard? He was running his mouth about, well, he said something that was here. I'm going to sound like a liberal. He said something that came across as misogynistic about it being older and out of touch and a female. And, he's been in hot water for some time. So his release, not surprising at all, except to Don Lemon. I mean, Cartoon Network has better ratings than Don Lemon has. And like 3 people watch Cartoon Network. Just saying.
So I agree with that. So very different situations in this way. Don Lemon's ratings were in the toilet, right? Whereas Tucker Carlson was the rating star. He was the most popular show on Fox. So I saw one tweet where somebody said, you know what happened to The Walking Dead when they killed off the lead characters? People stopped watching. And so it's actually pretty astonishing that Fox News would get rid of its top guy, like its ratings bonanza host. Then that is very different. Like Don Lemon's show, nobody watched it. He had been moved to a different time slot and even fewer people watched it. And also there was just an expose about Don Lemon in Daily Variety. Absolutely. You should all go read it. Absolutely scathing article, complete smackdown of Don Lemon. Example after example, like you said, at a misogynistic, sexist behavior towards women, but also bizarre behavior. I had never heard this before. There were accusations. He had this female co-host and she got some assignment that he wanted. And so she started receiving anonymous text messages that she perceived as threatening to her cell phone, like taunting her. And then they allegedly traced these to Don Lemon. Like, this is bizarre, actually, behavior. And that article just came out. So I think CNN, and also they have this new guy that's kind of trying to clean house because CNN's ratings tanked so much when they decided to be oppositional to Trump. All of that conspired together. Don Lemon's days were numbered. In terms of the coincidence that it happened the same morning as Tucker, maybe they had the Don Lemon firing planned and they decided to do it when the Tucker thing came out just to distract attention from the Don Lemon thing. That might be the link.
I agree. I noted earlier that he also had just had a recent controversy with what he said about Nikki Haley, where he described her as basically being past her prime just because she was in her late 40s. And it's a funny clip where he's surrounded by women and they're looking at him like, what did you just say? You know, he's like, oh, you know how a woman over 40, she's just kind of past her prime.
Past her prime.
Past her prime. That, I think, was the beginning of the end. He lost a lot of women, and he's done a lot of controversial things. His ratings were in the toilet. It's interesting that they happened at the same time. I have to say it's interesting. Although Tucker Carlson was at the top of his game and Don Lemon was at the very bottom of his.
I wanted to say one thing about the Nikki Haley thing, because, you know, we've been discussing on this podcast just the appalling treatment of conservative women in this country and also in the state, including from some elements on the right or people who claim they're conservative and they spend their waking energy trashing conservative women. So I thought what he said to Nikki Haley was absolutely disgraceful. And, you know, I just want to say as a female, so his comment was something like, oh, women are in their prime in their 20s and 30s and maybe their 40s. Or so he wasn't even willing to say women in their 40s. But you know what? I want to tell you right now, I don't know about you, Scarlett. I feel like I'm in my prime now. Now, do I look exactly like I did at 22? Who does? Nobody. We don't, okay? But I'm not in it for that reason. I feel in my prime because I finally feel like I have the wealth of knowledge to have the confidence in my own opinions. Like I feel like 15 years ago when I was first on the radio, I just didn't feel as confident. I needed the richness of life experience. I needed to take a few, I don't know, punt and survive. And I needed to watch like history unfold. Like I now feel like I have a baseline. Like I have institutional knowledge. Like I remember what happened 15 years ago. And I just feel like I'm in my prime. I don't know about you. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, talking about Nikki Haley past her prime, but I guess Joe Biden is just right exactly where, you know, boy, he's in the lane. I mean, dude.
Yeah, right.
Way to go.
Great.
He doesn't know what his name is, but you know, he plays sundowns. You know, it's sad. He's not actually running the country. There's some cabal behind the scenes who God only knows who's actually running the country into the ground. It's not Joe Biden because he doesn't have the wherewithal to even decide what he's going to eat for lunch.
I mean, can you imagine? So just to make it clear, Nikki Haley was 51 years old when he said that. And yeah, Joe Biden is 80 years old right now. Could you imagine anyone in the media calling a male presidential candidate who's 51 years old out of their prime? I mean, it's shocking that would only be an attack launch on females. And I agree with you, Jessica. Right now, I'm 52, and I just now I'm starting to feel like I've witnessed enough in life. I've experienced enough that I now feel that I can even come out and speak, and that you know, like you said, the experience that life gives you is a lot. Right now, my attitudes are a lot different than they were when I was 25, 30 years old. So I find that statement just absolutely abhorrent, and I do think that's probably a major reason why he was taken out.
Well, I'm going to answer this too here because.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to answer this too. I just turned 50, and Jim said something about this earlier when he talked about, you know, you hit a certain age, and there's this wisdom that you have all of a sudden. because you're not 35 and an idiot. You're not 25 and an
Mhm.
idiot. I look back on those years in my life. I'm like, how did I even make it here?
Me too.
It's
Me
like some of
too.
the things that I've done, just
Yeah.
ridiculous. But that's the experience, the wisdom, and everything. And politics is one of those realms where you could literally have a 20-year career, get involved in politics at 44, 45, and you're considered to be a baby, a neophyte.
Yeah.
And anybody, regardless of your gender or non-binary status, as it were, if you're 51, how are you going to sit there and say, well, she's past her prime? This is where Don Lemon confused two different things. Are we talking about sexual market value, or are we talking about just overall value? And he really screwed up on that. That's why certain people shouldn't watch YouTube. That's all I'm saying.
So let's switch to Tucker, because Don Lemon, like you guys said in your earlier podcast, big loss. I mean, it's funny because he had it coming for such a long time. Wasn't he drunk on air once too? Like during a Mardi Gras? What was that?
Him
New
and
Year's
him
Eve?
him and
New Year's-
Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, they were drunk on, or allegedly, whatever, drunk on TV. Like this has been such a long time coming. But no one saw Tucker coming, I don't think. I think no one's. In fact, so I was reading an article before I came on the air here, just to sort of get the latest scuttlebutt. And of course, it's all unnamed sources, blah blah blah. But you know what? The latest line is that Tucker had no idea. He has no idea to this moment exactly why this happened. He didn't see it coming. Even his close staff had no idea. They learned about it on Twitter, like his closest staff. He was described as being completely blindsided. His producer was also fired. And one article I read said this was a direct order from Rupert Murdoch, and that everyone's sort of scrambling around to try to figure out why Murdoch did this. Now, I don't know if this is true, because I think there's a lot about this that just doesn't make sense. But one article I read said some people believe Rupert Murdoch, this is part of a plan by him to make it easier to find an institutional buyer for Fox. Like he wants to sell Fox. And Tucker's, controversial. There's been advertising boycotts, and that he fired him in order to I guess just make it easier to sell Fox. I don't know if that's true. It's one theory out there. And the latest appears to be that Tucker was fired, that it wasn't what we heard initially. People are saying initially maybe he quit because they wanted him to do something on the air he didn't want to do. I mean, maybe, but the latest narrative seems to be that he's totally blindsided and he was fired.
Have you guys watched the last speech he gave? That's what I was reviewing on Twitter, to the Heritage Foundation 50th anniversary big gala. And I watched it this morning before any of this, and I was so inspired by it. I was writing out the transcript myself because I thought there's a lot of good quotes that I will use myself in future speeches or podcasts. It was really brilliant. And there's a line where he said, there's a point where you look around you and you see so many people break under the strain, the downward pressure, and whatever they're going through, and you look at them with disdain and sadness as you see people become quislings. They're revealed as cowards. And I think it's a revelation. I think that is sort of foreshadowing that during the Dominion brouhaha, he is the one that is the least likely to be affected, because he was sort of pointing out about Sidney Powell, and he was sort of saying, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't smell right. Where's the Kraken? And he's the one behind the scenes that's sort of questioning why we're going full steam ahead. We're not sure. So I think this is less about the Dominion and more about that he's a straight up truth teller, that he's not beholden to the Republican Party, to the Democrat Party. And that, I think, makes him dangerous. That makes him someone who I think, I know there was term establishment, but maybe the elite fear the most. Somebody who feels like they have nothing to lose. They're just going to tell the truth. And his recent podcast with Russell Brand, I would suggest people watch it. It says a lot.
So Scott Clemens said Tucker News getting fired. He cost Fox News $787 million. I'm going to disagree with Scott, and I'm going to agree with Scarlett. You know, I've been reading up on that, and the Dominion lawsuit really didn't bring Carlson into it very much. They were focusing on Hannity and Laura Ingraham. So if Tucker was being fired over Dominion, then why were the alleged worst offenders who are actually brought more firmly into the lawsuit not also fired? So I think that's a red herring. And, you know, of course, his text messages came into the public domain where he was trashing Trump. But I don't think Rupert Murdoch is some huge fan of Trump. I feel like the Dominion thing, the timing makes it sound like that. It's the easy answer, but I kind of think it's a red herring.
I'd argue that it was a factor, but not the factor. I mean, you're talking almost $800 million. I mean, that's going to be something in there. I've heard a few things over the course of the day here in that, you know, his exposure and talking about the whole January 6th incident, breaking that down, you know, not really going along with certain parts of the narrative. And somebody brought up earlier, Rupert Murdoch potentially selling Fox News. We also have to remember too, that two of his sons aren't necessarily on, you know, the conservative side of things. So that's, I think, a factor in that as well too. But there's a silver lining in this, especially for Tucker Carlson. I don't know what the number is exactly, but he obviously he's got all the ratings. He's banging it out like a champ, and he's making something like $35 to $50 million a year. Tucker Carlson goes on his own, and there's been speculation that perhaps he wanted to get fired. Tucker Carlson goes on his own. He commands 100 plus easy. I mean, literally, we're talking nobody. And there's been talking, was he going to go Daily Wire, Daily this, or, you know, what other organization? Nobody can afford him. Literally nobody. Spotify, nobody. And if Tucker Carlson goes on his own, not only is he going to be paid, but strangely enough, he'll probably blow Joe Rogan away. And Joe Rogan is the #1 podcast on this planet.
Jim, what do you think? What's your theory?
You know, yeah, we were speculating on this. Can you imagine if, you know, Megyn Kelly's doing terrific since she's left Fox? And can you imagine a team? What would you think of a team up between Tucker and Megyn Kelly? I wonder if that's something they'd consider. That would be an incredible show.
So I heard two other theories, and this is in the Los Angeles Times tonight, so take it with a grain of salt. But one was what Ed said, that he had made these incendiary January 6th comments. Like, I don't buy that because those were a long time ago. So like, why now? But the second theory is there is this lawsuit that was filed by a booking producer a month ago, roughly, in which she's alleging all of this misbehavior on his show. She's alleging, for example, that they put posters of Nancy Pelosi in a bathing suit around the set, and that one thing, listen to this, that the pace of work drove her to therapy. This is one of her allegations. And that they called a breast milk room a waste of space. But here's the thing, like, I don't think she alleged Tucker said those things, just that there was a climate on the show. So I have to be honest, I find those arguments to be red herrings too, or they don't really make sense to me. Why they would add up to Fox letting go its highest rated, let's say that again, highest rated host. And again, I get all the Dominion and the systematic or whatever it's called, the other pending lawsuit from the other voting company, but he wasn't the big player in those allegations. So it just, something isn't adding up.
No, he wasn't the big player. Far more would be Sean Hannity and other hosts. Like, he was a minor player. It's just
all of them. And Pirro, Hannity.
Yeah, you were right to question those allegations, because I watch his Fox Nation show all the time, and he does not go to New York to film Tucker. He now has a place in Florida. but before in Maine. He built a studio in Maine so that he didn't have to go into New York, and that he loves
Probably for tax purposes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not on the set. He's always remote. He also doesn't use Twitter. He doesn't even have a television in his house. Anything done on Twitter is done by his staff, and then they print things out and he reads them. He hates using his phone. He hardly ever uses it except for rare occasions. He'll talk about this. Like he sort of hates technology, and as soon as he's out and he's done filming the show, he likes to just read and be with his wife and his dogs, and his kids are grown and he sees them. So he's been talking a lot about this recently, which I find interesting. I also wanted to state that Trump did give out a comment, and he said about Tucker being fired from Fox, "I'm shocked. I'm surprised. He's a very good person, a very good man. Tucker's been terrific, especially over the last year or so." So that's that. So
I think we don't know what we don't know. I think that there's something else. I don't buy any of these theories, and they're being leaked out, like I said, to the liberal media, to the Los Angeles Times and things like that. Maybe the one about Rupert gearing up to sell Fox makes more sense, but like honestly, I just keep feeling like there's something that we don't know.
If I may, I'd like to throw out a theory I heard earlier today. Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks have been speculating for some time that Tucker Carlson is going to run for president. Well, running for president might not necessarily be the best thing, because right now, understandably, Trump's got a couple different things hanging over his head, but in the end of the day, right now, he is clearly the Republican front runner. And honestly, whether it be Georgia, the feds, New York, they're trying to drain him of resources, time, and just get all the bad press they can. What if Donald Trump ends up tapping Tucker Carlson to be his VP?
Although Tucker doesn't like Trump, like he called him names.
Correct.
Stranger things have happened, but like he's a big non-Trump fan.
Yeah, Tucker said he would never
but
run for office. I think he just recently said like he would absolutely never run for office. It would be too much. But I think that the left is running around like, and I made this kind of comment early this morning in Chronicles of Narnia, when Aslan is killed, when they murder him, and they rejoice, they party, they dance, they hold his head up, they think we've won. It's analogous to the story of Christ. I think that they shouldn't party too long. I think they've just made Tucker Carlson even more powerful.
Absolutely.
He is going to come out of this, I think, with a bigger voice, a bigger and better platform, and he's going to be free from the shackles of Fox News. I am sure there's a lot that he couldn't do because he was tied to Fox News. Now he's on his own, and I think he's going to be better than ever. So I'm excited to see where he lands, what he does. Jim, you told me this. I'll pay $5 a month. I'll pay $10 a month for whatever he does for his content. I think it would be worth it. I would have no problem doing that. And I'll have that extra money because I'm canceling my Fox Nation.
I think that Tucker, what he shares with Trump is he's somewhat anti-establishment, and he's gone pretty hard at Kevin McCarthy and some of the Republican leadership, quote unquote anti-establishment, because I think that word gets overused. It's trite to the point of having a meaning. But like he does appeal to that wing of the conservative movement as well. And so it's just always been interesting to me that he's so anti-Trump. But Ed, I read what you said. I did read speculation that he might consider running for president. I don't know if it's true, but that is floating out there.
Tucker is pro the people who support Trump. He is pro the working class. He's pro the ordinary man. He's pro the person that doesn't have a voice in this current, this current culture. And I think he's never really publicly been anti-Trump. Maybe he said some things behind the scenes, but people do that a lot
in the text. Yeah,
in his text. But I think what people say in their texts, like, God forbid anyone got a hold of any of our texts. People say things when they're pissed off. They say things, and that doesn't necessarily reflect how he views everything right now. But he has always been a champion of those who support Trump, which are the everyday, ordinary person who is disregarded, the person that no one cares about, particularly the white working class people, who in this whole world of woke, Christians, those who feel left out of this whole big, global reset crap that we're dealing with right now.
So
I wanted to show it real quick. I just wanted to
Brian
show.
Schumann.
Brian's on. Okay, I just want to quick show a tweet that Trump put out today regarding Don Lemon. It was funny. He said,
that one was funny.
That was good.
The dumbest man on television, Don Lemon, has finally been fired from fake news CNN. My only question is, what took them so long? He posted that on Truth Social. I thought that was pretty good.
So our chairman is, the State Republican Party chairman is weighing in, so that's cool. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian. Yeah, he types.
I guess he can't talk back. I can't wait for Brian to talk, but he can't talk.
He's saying the left is in mourning that the Fox News Dominion lawsuit didn't go to trial, driving them crazy that the dirty laundry didn't get aired. The Tucker story is a sequel they need to pump up because the original flopped. Tucker will run to the bank and Fox will recover in time. Interesting.
I know Fox is going to recover in time. That's the one part I might disagree with Brian on. Like, I don't know. I mean, what's the reason to watch Fox right now?
Fox.
He is the reason.
I think Fox will stabilize at some point, but it'll, much like CNN's kind of pretty much out the door, it'll become CNN. I
think it's the beginning of the end for Fox, actually. I do.
Yeah. I don't know what the future for Fox is. I don't, what do they plan to do? I think the Laura Ingraham is good. I do like Laura Ingraham, but frankly, you can watch bits of her segment on YouTube. That's not too hard to find the best takes on YouTube. I mean, I haven't tuned in much to Fox since the 2020 election. But when I do watch a presidential debate, or there is some kind of breaking news, I do turn to Fox, and they do have, like, Dan Lennington was just on Fox and Friends in the morning. I like Pete Hegworth. I like him too. I like Rachel Duffy. So there's some things, but I don't sit and watch the news. Like I said, I listen to podcasts. I don't really sit down and watch the news or have it on in the background anymore.
No one does anymore. And people that are under, 30, they really don't. They want on-demand media. They want podcasts. They watch Netflix and Hulu and things like that. They get news through Snapchat. It's a different media world. And I just don't see what's Fox's brand right now. Like, what is their brand? I can't even tell you.
Laura Ingram's talking about Sun Priaire right now on.
Oh, really?
Cool.
Yeah.
And
that really blew up.
Yeah, we also should mention that Dan Bongino was let go by Fox, and
I wanted to talk about that.
Lara Trump too.
Really?
Yeah. A couple months ago.
They're cleaning house. They're getting rid of. They're doing something.
Sorry, Jim. Yeah.
No, I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to bring that point up that he was let go last week, and I didn't understand what the reasoning was. Has Fox said why he was let go?
I didn't see.
I don't see it either.
He's been very critical, like Tucker. He's just been critical of sort of the vaccines. He's, that's another thing we haven't talked about much. Tucker has gone on a lot of rants about what's happening with the vaccines, and these guys, if you want money in news, they fund the news. They do. Pfizer and all these big pharma companies. So maybe Big Pharma said, hey, we'll infuse you with the cash you need after losing over 700 after a settlement of $780 million, like we'll infuse you with some cash, but you need to get rid of this person, because they are bad for vaccines.
But their stock
well-
is tanked. They're losing millions of dollars as we speak. Like,
Yeah.
and he was the ratings leader by far. So I guess Hannity's number 2, and he's got like 500,000 fewer viewers than Tucker. So make it make sense. It just literally doesn't make sense.
And how many
Thank you,
people
Virgil
watch
Kane.
Hannity?
By the way, we have a viewer from England, and he's saying really nice things. So welcome to our podcast, Virgil.
Oh, that's
Let's also too look at what happened on YouTube over the weekend. They purged a bunch of videos out there.
Yes.
From
Yes.
content creators like Jeremy Hanlon here in Wisconsin, the quartering, Tim Pool, Ron Johnson, a bunch of, especially people that were speaking
Matt Walsh
speaking out against the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light story.
Yes, and they purged a lot of those videos. They purged whole channels. A couple Daily Wire personalities, their whole channels disappeared, and then they came back, but they're missing a lot of episodes. It's another purge. That's been trending on Twitter all week.
But the question is why did they do the purge? And speculation, nobody knows at this particular moment in time. Did Anheuser-Busch say, you know what? If you don't get rid of this, we're going to pull our, funding for advertisings here. And
I mean, I would guess that Rupert Murdoch, just knowing what I know about him, wouldn't you guess that Rupert Murdoch is primarily motivated by the bottom line? Like he's financially motivated.
That's
so
correct.
There was some reason that he decided Tucker was a financial liability, maybe like I said, because he wants to sell Fox and it's harder to do with Tucker and as the leading guy or something. What doesn't make sense is then the stock tanked and he's the ratings leader. So I don't know. I go in circles.
Like Sean's reporting here that Fox is to open just below 30 tomorrow, which is 15% off its year high. And that everything's pointing to downward pressure on the stock. I would think as the owner of a company like that, you don't want to see your shares take a dump like that.
And Matthew Allen just said it's personal, not about money, and he might be right. I go in circles on this because it just none of the arguments that have been made really make much sense.
I agree with Matthew because this happened so suddenly. He was probably fired and security walked him out. I mean, it was very fast, and that doesn't make sense. Why not give him some time? Like, here, announce this is going to be your last month, say your farewells, do some goodbye shows. Everyone can send him off. Instead, something like this, there's just something weird. There's something weird going on.
There's something weird. He didn't see it coming. That's the latest accounts. He was blindsided. His close staff found out about it on Twitter. There's something odd. And if it wasn't Tucker Carlson, usually when this happens, you kind of go, oh, there's some allegation. There's some woman in the
no, it's not.
In the wings. He's a Matt Lauer, but it doesn't fit with him. That also doesn't fit.
Well, and Joanne's comment here, Joanne speculating that it's over the January 6th tapes and coverage. Joanne, I might buy that if it happened within a few months after it happened, but that's over 2 years ago now. Why would it have taken them 2+ years to fire him over January 6th? So I question if that's the motive.
Yeah, the timing doesn't work on that.
But he has made other comments regarding that and other segments regarding that over the last 2 years. So the question is this a cumulative thing? I think too often we always look for that one thing when it might just be a compounding effect of multiple different things. And maybe it is January 6th, Dominion, commentary about X, Y, and Z, and Rupert Murdoch wanting to make money on this sale. Again, I'm speculating because I don't know any better. I'm in my own basement. So, what do I know?
I just think the timing is odd. The timing is so rushed. And, I guess on his Friday show, he was like, see you on Monday, or he signed off that way or something.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, he
timing
was.
is
Who told me? Someone told me they had evidence that he was expecting to go on the air today. Scarlett, was that
Scarlett
you?
said
Yes.
that.
Yeah, yes. I know he was expected to go on the air today because one of his staffers I'm good friends with somebody who knows his staffers, and I was supposed to send him all the information we had on the Sun Priaire case because they were considering talking about it today. And notice now Laura Ingraham has Dan Lennington on. And so they were interested in this. It was something that Tucker was like asking for more information on. And I talked with my friend Sunday. This morning, I was sent a reminder, hey, send that stuff, and maybe he'll talk about it today, maybe tomorrow. And then the news came out.
There's something we don't know. I'm going to go back to that point.
Yeah.
It's too rushed, too odd. It's like I said, you don't kill off the top character in your sitcom and expect the audience to stick with you.
Okay, so
It's like
Joanne's
killing off Rick Grimes.
responding that she's referring to new tapes, and I honestly don't follow Tucker enough to understand what new tapes would be.
I haven't heard about this.
He ran a bunch and said there would be more the next day, and it never happened.
The tapes they're talking about are the January 6th surveillance tapes that Speaker McCarthy ended up giving to him, and he was airing those, and that was definitely part of that too.
You're right. I mean, he's done so many. Then he just did a April 19th rant on Big Pharma. He talked about some stuff going on in Ukraine. But they were really upset. They were really upset about his those tapes of January 6th. McConnell, all of the Republicans lined up to kind of condemn him.
Can you explain, just because I didn't see him, what did the tape show?
My understanding of what the tape show was just more of like police letting people into the Capitol buildings, and it wasn't just the parsed information that was out there. It was everything raw, fresh, and organic. The issue that, as I understand it, was he was supposed to air more of it, and I forget what the number was, but it was like in the thousands of hours of tape. There it is, 14,000 hours of tape. And there was the issue with Ray Epps and everything else, and which of course leads to people kind of thinking, okay, were there agitators there? Were there feds involved? And those were the questions that were being asked, but nobody wants to answer those questions.
Yeah, because of those tapes, the shaman was let out because
absolutely.
He was in jail and he was let out the next week because it showed him just basically all of the security, the Capitol security, were just following him around, and and
they had a conversation, didn't they?
Yep, had a conversation. They opened a door and let him in. And then when he was told to leave, he yelled out to everyone, "Hey, we got to get out of here. They're telling us we have to leave." It basically undermined the complete narrative. There also was incomplete clips where the House only showed part of an incident that made one of the senators look like he was running. Who was it? Was it Josh Hawley? They had teased Josh Hawley about, but it turns out that they totally just edited these clips. They basically just edited the clips to make Republicans look mad, to make the January 6th people that were inside look like they were kind of more violent than they were.
Right.
Tucker was also he was anti-Ukraine, and he was challenging, the conventional wisdom and government line on vaccines and all of that. So he was taking some stances against the orthodoxy. There's no question about that.
And let's be clear too, as far as January 6th is concerned, the people that were in there destroying things, rioting, and there was a riot.
Yes.
Then yes, you should be arrested, tried, and dealt with accordingly. You were escorted. I remember there was an old lady just meandering on in the Capitol building, just watching everything as it happened. You don't lock them up. You don't put them in solitary confinement. If a cop lets you in, shake your hand, This is the whole weaponization of the alphabet agencies.
Well, I think there was
And
two things going on, right? There was a more
Mhm.
violent, there was an area that was a lot more violent, and then there was an area that was a lot more peaceful. And those that were there sort of peacefully had no idea what was going on, the other side. And when the doors opened,
Correct.
a lot of them were walking around taking pictures like they were tourists. It seemed like, oh, we can go in. Oh, okay, we're gonna. And some people that were arrested said they simply walked in, took some pictures, turned around and walked right out. That's very different from people that were violent and that were just destroying property.
Well, yeah, the left wants to say everyone who went to the earlier rally is somehow some insurrectionist, which is ridiculous. People had a right to go to the earlier rally. They didn't have a right to assault police officers, which was absolutely appalling. They didn't have a right to like invade Nancy Pelosi's office and, grab her computer and go on the floor of the Senate and do what they did. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, there was some really disgraceful behavior on January 6th, to be clear. But like,
Absolutely.
nonetheless, I mean, your point is that Tucker was taking some really controversial positions on issues that have been deemed taboo by the left, which controls a lot of the narratives in this country. But I still don't know if I think that's why he lost his job.
I still not sure that's the reason why either. Did anyone see this, an interview? I'd heard about that with Ray Epps, the 60 Minutes interview.
I did not.
Like, I don't want to go to, I really honestly don't want to go down January 6th rabbit holes.
I don't really know. I don't know that. It's not an area that I cover.
I don't want to because it'll be so easy for the left to jump all over our podcast. And it's sort of a tangent. That's a huge rabbit hole. That's my opinion.
I wouldn't worry so much about the left. I would worry more about.
Well, I work for them. I have to work with them and they're my bosses.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's just my opinion. You guys can say what you want. But.
I think it's complicated. I think it's not any one thing. But something. I think they would have liked to get rid of Tucker a long time ago, but he was there. They couldn't. So something happened that finally made it okay for them to do this. Something finally was the tipping point. We don't know what that is, but I would suspect this is something that a lot of people at Fox had wanted to see for a while because he is the most hated. We love him, but the left absolutely hate him. They hate him with a passion.
Let me ask this here. We look at individuals like Tucker Carlson and other people with podcasts, Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, everything else like that. But Andrew Breitbart said this, and as have many others, all politics is local. Here in Wisconsin, I think we got a huge talent pool here. And a lot of us aren't, you couldn't get me to run for office to save my life. Like I wouldn't do it.
Me neither.
I wouldn't do it because, well, that would be golden handcuffs. That being said, though, what do we need to do here in Wisconsin to create our own state level Tucker Carlsons, Steven Crowders, things like that?
That's what we're doing on this podcast. That's Jim's brainchild, right, Jim?
Right. That's kind of what my plan was. Yeah, this is the brainchild here, and it's doing well so far.
Just to bring all of these wonderful conservative voices like you and Scarlett and the other day, Michelle Litchin's boss and Nick Harris and Orlando Owens, just all these amazing conservative voices that don't have, a huge platform all the time. And I've been noticing how just interesting all the views are and all the different people at different walks of life. And I feel like I'm not trying to trash talk radio because I do love everyone on it, but local talk radio doesn't really have as interesting of an array of voices and personalities as Jim's collecting here on this podcast. It's pretty cool.
Well, I like that
we get the comments too.
Yeah, it's cool bringing in everyone, that we can bring everyone in that is, at home at night, that they can all feel like they're participating. I do want to eventually set it up so people can actually call in. I am working on that as my next.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, they'd call my cell phone and we can bring them on live. So I'm working on that. So I think that's real important. What's that?
You gotta get your Skype line ready.
The Skype line, yeah.
That would be really fun to take callers. I sort of miss how some of the talk radio shows locally, they don't take callers really anymore. I liked hearing from callers. It kind of spices it up.
Yeah,
let's get callers.
Yeah, and even though right now we're reading, it's neat because you feel like you're in a conversation with a lot of people and you're getting some different perspectives, and we can disagree on something or make a finer point, and this is what we want. We all genuinely agree we're conservatives and we want to see what's best for this country, and maybe someone else is watching something a little more closely, and so we can learn something, we can get a different opinion, and we can all still get along. And maybe someday we have an event where we can like get a beer, have some wine, and like kind of as we grow, like do some things with our audience where we can actually like hang out and have events and have speakers and do all sorts of fun things.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Justin and I have actually talked about having Wisconsin Right Now once a month or once a quarter. It'd be cool to get together all of our supporters and everyone just get together and have a few beers and talk. I think
no Bud Light.
A lot of fun.
No Bud Light.
All right, so I think we should get this wrapped up. Any final thoughts, Jessica?
Just that I'm going to say again, we don't know what we don't know about Tucker. All the arguments I've heard so far, there's just something that's off about them. It doesn't make sense. In contrast, Don Lemon makes perfect sense. He's, he had terrible ratings, but when it comes to Tucker, and he's a buffoon, but when it comes to Tucker, like you just don't, cut your top rated guy without a really big reason. And I haven't quite figured out what it is yet. I'm just being honest, but he's going to go on and probably be bigger than he was, because I really think the days of like cable networks and everything, certainly linear TV, are waning. It's not how people get news anymore.
Nope.
I agree. Scarlett?
Well, my final thought is going to be about our dear president, Joe Biden, who said today, there's no such thing as someone else's child. Our nation's children are all our children. To which I say, shut up and leave our kids alone, you dirty old man.
Ed, I want you to follow
Scarlett
that
on the podcast. This is why Scarlett.
That's why we like having Scarlett.
So when I do my podcast, I'm like really unchained. That would have got a great response. But again, time and place. My children are mine. You have no say. That's me being nice. That being said, though, Tucker Carlson is it. Someone use a movie analogy. I'll use one now. Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You strike me down, Lord Vader, I will become stronger.
Yes.
And blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, Tucker's going to be lit. Don Lemon is going to be forgotten in the relics of history. It's going to be amazing. Sun Priaire, stand by. And if other counties and other school districts are watching, then you know what? Maybe you guys should be paying attention.
We're going to
complicated issues. These are very complicated issues. We're not solving the world's problems here, but the one problem we can solve is what can we do to become a better person every day? Because again, all politics is local. I can't thank you guys enough for having me on. I really thank you and respect the fact that you guys have me here. Again, thank you. Can't say it enough.
Thanks, Ed.
I'm glad you came on.
I'm very happy you came on. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, guys.
Jim, you got to give your final take.
My final take is
Jim's like, I want to go watch Netflix.
Yeah, Don Lemon is done. Thank God. And I mean, that was a really bright point of the day today. And I agree, Tucker is only got the sky's the limit for him. I think that this actually could be a great move for him, because now maybe he's been handcuffed, and maybe now he will be free to actually say and do exactly what he wants to do. So I think it's good.
And Tucker, if you're out there listening, if you want to join
Yeah.
Do you want to join us?
You never know. You never
Yeah.
know.
Always
Yeah,
have a place.
I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link, Tucker.
We'll
Yeah.
send
Yeah,
you
you
a
can
link,
be in one of
Tucker.
our Hollywood squares here. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I would
You
have a
always
heart
have a place
attack.
with Wisconsin right now.
Very
I would
good.
have a heart attack.
I would die.
Jim, turn that into a reel. Put it on TikTok and make it go viral.
I
Yes.
will. All right.
You're
Very
welcome
good.
here. We won't
All right.
cancel you, Tucker. We won't cancel you.
All right. Thanks,
Because
guys.
we operate outside of the corporate media filter. Like there is I know it's a joke, but like there's a point to that. Like we aren't controlled by corporate minders.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell Jim and I, oh, you can't have Tucker Carlson on, or oh, you can't talk about this or that. Like we can do what we want on this show.
That's why we ask for donations from our listeners and readers, and that's why we're not going to take any large donations from any big corporations, because we do not want to be ever once told what we can or can't do.
Yep.
So please go on our website and click on the little coffee mug if you want to become a reoccurring member, even $10 a month. That's why we're able to stay free of that sort of nonsense that like Tucker's running into, that Megyn Kelly ran into, right? It's on wisconsinrightnow.com, and there's a little coffee cup at the bottom. You just click on that, you can donate.
All right.
Golden shackles.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thank
Good
you
night,
guys. Good night.
Thanks everyone.